Welcome back to TMI with Teryl and Martha. And while we're not a political show, we are going to talk a little bit about the political world as it relates to wellness. So about once a month, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about what's happening with the Department of Health and Human Services, which is led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on there, and you are my resource. So this is great because I'm coming from a wellness business person, spa lifestyle viewpoint, and Martha's coming to us from a very political based viewpoint as far as being able to have a nice show on the radio that you can discuss all things going on in our government, local and national. So I think it's important for us to be able to stay in touch with these things because these things will affect us and our ability to stay well in our home. So like it or not, relative to your party affiliation, it's not really about that at all. It's about what changes are being made and what's happening out there that's going to benefit our families and our world for the better.
Well, and I think one thing that was underestimated in the last election, which the Republicans capitalized on, was something called the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again.
Right.
Okay. And there was a lot of kind of bubbling up that was happening. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for good or for ill, kind of tapped into
He
that.
did.
Okay. And because of kind of some weird things that happened with them the Democrats not allowing a primary, he felt like he was not getting a fair shake, and he ended up going over to the
Jumping.
Republican side. I don't
Mhm.
know if he's actually become a Republican, but he helped Donald Trump get elected. And the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, was kind of the movement that he created. So he became the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And just to give you a little bit of perspective there, Health and Human Services handle just a huge amount of the federal budget. Our average federal budget is about $7.4 trillion. This one department is $1.7 trillion, and it is almost twice what the Department of Defense is. So you'll always hear, oh, why can't we cut for defense? Why can't we cut for defense? If you cut out every single dollar of defense and what's called discretionary spending, you would still have $5 trillion being spent. And of that 1.7, almost everything in health and human services is on what's called automatic pilots, things like Medicare
Right.
and Medicaid and things like that. Okay. So I wanted to give you that number, not to blur your eyes with number, but it's a huge number. I can't even imagine 1.7 trillion. And it's gone up
So much money.
38% since COVID.
That's crazy.
So, and there might have been a reason for it initially, but the biggest problem we've had is the spending hasn't gone down since COVID came along. But here's the things that I think RFK kind of latched onto, and then also that he is doing to change things. So the first thing is that we spend more money on healthcare as a government than any country in the world by a large margin. Okay.
Totally believe that.
But the
I believe it.
country's health is declining. We have higher levels of obesity. Death rates are higher. Life expectancy is lower.
That is
Okay.
amazing.
And so what a lot of people are saying is, what can we do better? And I think that resonated with some people.
I think that's a great question, Martha. I mean, when you have statistics that say that the most glorious nation in the world, the most prosperous nation in the world, has the population with the worst health, that just doesn't add up. And so I think where he comes in is that he did tap the vein of the people that are asking that question and saying, what can we do differently? And how can we protect our homes and our children and our families like they do in some of the other countries, actually?
Well, and I think that it's also that there was so much, the term waste, fraud, and abuse just kind of gets overused sometimes. But what he found when he got into this department was that they had 40 different communications departments within the Department of Health and Human Services. That's not helping one person as far as the health is
It's just a
concerned.
lot of admin.
That's exactly right. A lot of admin. And so also, they had a bunch of employees that had duplicated services where they were all doing the same job. So I know there's been a lot of talk about people being fired. And look, I don't want anybody to lose their job. It is the worst feeling in the world to lose your job. But there were also a lot of people that were doing jobs that other people were doing
Right.
also. And so what he's trying to do is get it down to an area that's going to work. And he was controversial about it. There's no doubt about it. And I think the biggest area of controversy was over vaccines.
Yes.
And he
It
had
kinda hurt him a little bit, I think. I think with the vaccine controversy, I think it took away some of his standing.
Yeah, and I think that what happened also is that recently he got rid of the vaccine board that he had, and he's going to put a new one together. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that when you develop a vaccine, you basically have immunity from any the government gives you immunity from any problems that that
Right,
vaccine
that
might
it
cause.
creates. Right.
And what's happening is he believes is that there needs to be better oversight on the vaccines. He
Agreed.
says he's not
Right.
anti-vaccine. My niece, who I love very much, she didn't think she could have children, and she's having a baby now, which I'm so excited, and so is she. But and it's been a long time since I've had a baby. They told her that in the hospital before that baby goes home, there's something like
So
18
many
vaccines.
into a brand new newborn child.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
cool. That's my
No,
professional
but it's
opinion.
and look, we're not doctors and we don't play one on
Right.
TV, but I'll go with what my pediatrician told us. So, our pediatrician, Buddy Langston, he was a longtime pediatrician in Gainesville. He was the pediatrician to my husband and his brothers, and he took care of my 3 boys and my daughter until she was 8 years old.
Wow.
So, he had practiced through
Wow.
everything. He
That's
had
old
seen
school.
everything. And you know what he said to me, and this is very reasonable advice: "Don't take the vaccine the first year it's out."
That's
Okay,
smart.
wait and see.
Let it do its work.
Don't be the guinea
Yeah.
pig, and for us, while we were growing up, it was the pox vaccine that was
Vaccine.
coming out at that time. So I waited a couple of years
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
I approved it for my children to have. So I think there's been some, misinformation about him
Yes.
and how he looks at vaccines, and but there is a growing number of people in this country that don't want to vaccinate their children,
Yes. It's a large amount. So
and
it's kinda like it's the pendulum swung really far in the other direction, I think.
I would argue that Um, the reason why you don't see these diseases is because you were vaccinated for them. And so when you start seeing them again, I'm in favor of most of the basic ones that have come through. And I think that there's been a lot of controversy around the COVID vaccine. And I think that one point has to be really clearly made is that, for example, they always compare it to polio. Oh, well, you would not get the polio vaccine. Polio is a respiratory virus. I mean, I'm sorry, is a gastrointestinal
Yes, yeah,
virus.
okay.
And we can develop vaccines that actually get rid of your ability to catch polio. But respiratory vaccines, the respiratory stuff changes all the time.
Yeah.
So it's more of a
It's
shot
kinda like the
than a
flu,
vaccine. It's actually like the
the
flu.
flu, there's so many strains, my husband and, his family, and now my family, we own Energetics is a natural remedy line, and it's got a lot of natural remedies, homeopathics, nutritionals, botanicals that help address things like that. So it was a real difficult position we were in as a business and as just individuals trying to decide. COVID, it was like a once in a lifetime situation where the entire world is sharing the same infection and it's traveled everywhere. This is not something many people go through. So I think that we were put in a position to try to really have to decide what to do. And so personally, I was put in a position where I was having grandchildren born during this time. And I have specific beliefs around the COVID vaccine per se and concerns. I had a lot of inside information being that we own a natural remedy line. But I had to make a decision. Do I want to be in the hospital with my daughters when they have their babies? The answer to that was yes. Do I want to do that more than I'm concerned about the consequences behind the vaccine? And the answer to that was yes. But I chose for myself what I felt, and our family had done some research, was the best choice out of the vaccination. So I chose the Johnson& Johnson vaccine. and I just did the one shot, and that rode me through everything, and I didn't catch COVID for years later, but I did catch COVID.
Well, and you're
But
going to. I
yeah,
mean,
I mean,
eventually you're
it's a
going to. And
yeah,
I think that I went through a health scare at that time too. And because it was a lung related, I had what was called a pneumonic effusion. Because it was lung related, my doctor did recommend to me to get the COVID vaccine when it came out because she said you don't want to have another lung problem,
right.
so soon after you've just had this one. So I think again, forget about what Robert Kennedy is doing. Have a good primary care physician so that you can ask these questions directly to somebody that knows you. But with some of the other things that they're doing, and what I really want to know from you all, and I hope that you'll interact with us as we
Really?
on our social media and on YouTube, and you like and subscribe there because I'd love to know what you think. Because when I look at this list of things, yeah, there might be things that are more controversial than others, but they seem like reasonable things. For example, there are 40 procurement offices. So they must have had 40 divisions or something like that because they had these 40 communications, 40 procurement, and 40 chief information officers.
Okay.
Okay. You don't need all of that in one department. Okay. So that has been reduced down. But the other thing they've done is they had these satellite offices. Listen to these towns: Boston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, like the most expensive places in the world to have
To
office
be.
space.
Yeah. It's hard to even travel there.
And in today's world, though, we're connected enough. I can see where 40 years ago you might want to have ancillary
Yeah.
offices that people can go to. But if you can put a good system together where people can get their questions answered,
People
direct.
to answer the phones, for
That's
heaven's
right.
sakes. Just
That's right.
just have them answer the phones.
So it looks to me like overall what they've done is they're trying to restructure the department.
Okay.
And I think that's a positive thing because what I want is the money that's spent in health and human services to be spent on healthcare for Americans. Okay. I don't care if they communicate it well. I don't care if they have a fancy office somewhere. I don't care about any of that kind of stuff. What I want is them to have the facilities. And they've got two terrific doctors that are heading up NIH. One, and I cannot pronounce his name. It's like a 16-letter last name. I can't pronounce it. But Marty McCary is heading up FDA. So they actually have good professional people heading up these different departments that need medical professionals
You
at the
gotta
top
have
of
those
them.
eyeballs on it,
Yes.
for sure.
So were your concerns about, as you were hearing all this stuff? Because you're a different kind of news consumer than I
I
am,
am.
but you're totally focused on health and
Yeah.
well-being for people. So kind of walk us through the feelings that you had as you were hearing some of this stuff.
Well, the most important thing that where I filled in the blanks for people actually. Our community is a medical community here in Gainesville. But even though we do have a lot of people here who prefer to live their lives in a more natural way, they try to stay healthy, put a lot of preventative care into their day-to-day lives. We had a naturopath at the spa for 15 years who built a huge practice, and a lot of the Latin American households came in, and they typically use herbs and natural remedies to deal with most common colds, flus, respiratory, any kind of sickness, really. They would catch it early in. It would always eliminate it or keep it from being something that became so acute they would need an antibiotic for. But there are actual natural forms of herbs and different uh, homeopathics, I guess I can tell you, that would act similar to antibiotics. So there's options out there. So the scariest thing was that there was so much controversy over the vaccinations and who should and shouldn't, and there was a lot of shame being brought into the game, and I felt like it was really defeating the purpose of what we really needed to do was get down to the meat and potatoes and find out what was going on, what was the truth, you know, what are they actually doing? Are they researching these, um, vaccines? But in the meantime, I just kept promoting immune function support, how to stay well, stress management, breath work, get your massage. And back when they shut down COVID, I was able to stay open because I had a chiropractor on duty So, she was considered, what was the term? Essential.
Essential.
Mhm. And we have a natural pharmacy at the spa. So there were people that were relying on us staying open to stay well during this time. So luckily we were able to do that. No massages, no facials, but there is something to the natural remedies. So what I did, Martha, for me was support the people that I was in position to support, and then those that I couldn't, I didn't negate what they were thinking or feeling. I just, always suggested they talk to their doctor. They ask the questions because nothing bad comes from asking the question, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I do think what led to this MAHA movement
Right.
that got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into the HHS was this sort of what ended up being in a lot of cases misinformation and disinformation.
Right.
We finally had Dr. Fauci say, "Oh, we didn't know anything about the 6 foot thing. We just made it up," or
Right.
we have no evidence that a mask actually helps unless it's an N95 mask. All
Right.
these coverings or whatever really didn't help. So I think people got in a field where people are very trusting, right?
Yes. They
They
started
they
asking
trust,
questions.
they started asking questions, and I think they sort of felt like, "If I can't trust people to tell me the truth on this, then what else do I have to question?" And I think that opened the door for
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy Jr. And for people that don't know who he is, he's got a very kind of storied American family. I mean, they're as close to royalty in
Yes.
American politics as you can
Absolutely.
be. His father was the attorney general and a senator from New York and was assassinated in 1968. His uncle was the president of the United
Mhm.
States and a senator before that and was assassinated in
Right.
1963. And then his uncle was the guy who actually did a lot of the healthcare legislation, Senator Ted Kennedy, and lived a long life, but was really, very involved in the kind of healthcare
Yes. Yeah.
legislation that we see today was very much because of Ted Kennedy. So he comes from this family, that has
Deep,
lots
deep
of
roots.
tentacles in all kinds of things in our society. And so I think that, it was a double-edged sword for him really. And I think he's, right now I'm willing to stand back, look and see what he's doing so far in the changes he's making in efficiency and duplication. I love that. Those kinds of things because I want the money that I'm putting aside. Maybe $1.7 trillion is the right number. Okay. But I want to know that it's not being wasted
Right.
before you give them more.
So it's funny because you're looking at that, but the thing that I'm really watching is, are we getting the dyes taken out of our foods? And how soon are those dyes taken out of our foods? Because those dyes have been proven, well proven, that there's a lot of those food colorings that can cause a lot of, tre imbalance in our children and ourselves, and it's already been taken out of the foods in European countries. It's illegal. So some of the things that are illegal for people in other countries to ingest, we're still just it's in our foods.
And
And I'm watching that.
it's so funny that you brought that up because that was the next topic because it looks like there was some kind of additive in Skittles that they have already said they're going to take out. There's also, I learned, I know I've brought this up a few times because I just couldn't believe it, that they put coloring in pickles,
S
that are like
It's
supposed to be fresh
insidious.
pickles.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things are petroleum based. And, I am not anti fossil fuel in any way, shape, or form. I think God gives us all of these different ways to create energy and that it's all a part of the patchwork quilt that is our energy supply. So I am not anti, but I don't want it in my food. Okay. So I think we're going to get that. And I think we're going to get that sooner rather than later because that's
Hope
something they can
so.
do because the companies are pushing back against it. They're saying they need more time to be able to come up with the recipes, but they've already got the recipes. They're using them in Europe.
Yeah.
Now I understand there's some retooling that will have to be done
Yes.
to the factories that they
Of
use, and that's
course.
legitimate. Okay. But they already have the recipes. They could just use the same ones they had.
And they should have known this was coming. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not because we are a social media world, a digital world, a YouTube world, a world where ChatGPT can answer any question you have in seconds, why wouldn't we be aware of what's happening in other countries? They would, and they know that those studies are out there. They know that the recipes are there, and it's being done elsewhere. Costs a little more money, I guarantee you, which is part of the problem. This is about profits. But the thing that bothers me deeply, and I'm not an activist, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm very purple, like our flowers when it comes to my politicalness. But what I do see is things, for example, like Roundup. They've made it illegal, but they're leaving it on the market to be used by landscapers, individuals. It's still sold on the floor at Home Depot, and it has been proven to cause cancer. It has been proven to cause mitochondrial dysfunction. It has been proven to be a poison to the human body, and it's being used for all kinds of things.
And, and that's
So
what
it's years.
we have to look at all of that, right?
Yes.
And I think that we're going to do a better job. I really do. I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I think it is the best way to enlarge the pie so that everyone can do better. It lifts all boats. I firmly believe in
I
that. It's
agree.
not a finite pie. It's a great thing. But capitalism without a moral code is just greed. And I learned that from Larry Burkett that had a company here
That's great.
in Gainesville called Christian Financial Concepts. He had been an aerospace engineer that was really good with money. And when he retired, he started this company that was called Christian Financial Concepts. It later became Crown Ministries, which people may have known. But he did that to help people manage their money, which was great. But he came on my show many years ago, and he said, you know, capitalism is the best way to grow an economy and to make people wealthy, but it has to have a moral foundation,
It does.
because without a moral foundation, it's just greed. And I think that's fair, because
I love that.
I'm not anti-profit. I think profit is a great thing. And I think that's what RFK is saying about the changes he wants to make. He doesn't want anybody to lose money on this, and they're not going to lose money on it. People are going to be happier if they know what's in their food and they know that their food is healthy.
I agree. And I think that, ultimately, we're talking right now about root cause to a lot of the trouble that we're seeing in our community and our population as a whole here in the United States. I think if we do get a handle on this is why I feel like RFK is so pivotal. Like him or not, he's going to be making decisions that are going to affect you in your home with your children on a day to day basis. So I really feel like it's a nonpartisan situation what we're dealing with. This is a human being situation, and it takes money to make the changes. Capitalism is not evil. Like you said, it's the money without the moral foundation that becomes evil. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that everybody needs to learn how to educate themselves on what they're eating, make the good choices, because between now and the time that all these changes are going to be made, you could do a lot of harm to your body. I've had to tell my landscaper, no more Roundup. I have little grandchildren running around barefooted on my lawn. I've got animals. I've got a pond where the water runs into the pond. I am so sorry for him because it makes his job harder. I understand. They've got to pull weeds the old fashioned way, you know? And I can't have my horses eating grass on the other side of the fence that are coated in Roundup because I don't know what that's going to cost later.
Right.
So, he has finally come to terms with that and he still loves me. And I don't mind paying a little extra to have somebody come hand pull the weeds. I'm certainly not going to have time to do it. So I've got to, if you're going to make these demands, you need to kind of
No,
ante
yeah, it's
up
like
for them.
I told Lynn Zoller when we got married, I do not do yard work. So that is something I have stuck by throughout my married life, and I will take care of anything on the inside of the house, but I do not do yard work. And my father had a movie of the only time I mowed the lawn in my
Oh,
life.
that's
Okay,
great.
because
Was it
I
a
never
riding
liked it.
lawnmower,
No,
Martha?
actually, he had a Jacobson reel mower that
Wow.
you pushed it, but it had a,
Oh, yeah.
it moved on its own a little
Yeah.
bit. It was called a real mower,
Oh, I'd
but,
like to see that.
because my dad had tiff green Bermuda grass, so anyway,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty great. It was pretty great. It was funny because I will do anything, but I will not do yard work.
Well, my husband would tell you I feel the same way, but I have a lot of yard. I have a 7.5 acres of yard, but not all of it is yard. Some of it is
Animals.
yeah, horse pasture and whatnot. But the person who lived in the house before me was a master gardener, and she did an amazing job. My job is to help keep it where it was when she did the work. However, it's not my thing. My mother was great. She had a green thumb. I'll take care of the indoor house plants just fine. But trying to do yard work outside is just not what I think is fun. So I don't typically tend to do a lot of yard work either, but whether it's the poisons in the yard or, whether you get a really great I will say social media does have some really good recipes for, if you hit the right, what's the term?
Algorithm.
Yes! If you hit the right algorithm, you can get good recipes for, weed killers on Instagram, TikTok, and the like, and you can still get the same job done, you just don't have to do it with poisonous, content. And, lots of good food recipes are on there too. I have to say I have actually made some Instagram, menus.
So you don't pull out your cookbook anymore?
No, I don't. I don't. I definitely don't. And Green Chef, we'll call you later, Green Chef, because that is my go-to for, cooking with my husband is nice.
It's so funny because, my mother wrote little notes all the time, and, it was funny because I'm still finding them, inside her books and things like that. And so I found this Christmas a whole bunch of her recipes that I hadn't seen in years. So we made a bunch of those this Christmas, which was really nice. And so you find those kinds of things. And I think it's really getting back to nature as much as possible and not being so worried about what is the government going to do.
Right.
Control what you can control, which
Absolutely.
is, your own realm of responsibility.
Right.
I call it, putting the rock in and letting the water ripple out. Control what you can control. Don't spend so much time, getting excited about every little thing that happens. And talk to your circle of friends because I bet you're going to find some good things that you can handle. And look, we're going to try on about a monthly basis to just kind of update on what's happening on HHS because I think it's important that we know that is the largest department in the government, except for Homeland Security. And it's bigger than defense. Everybody wants to talk about defense, but it's bigger than defense.
Wow.
And so, and if those of us that are of a certain age, we want to save Medicare, and Medicare is part of HHS. So you want to make sure that that happens too. I look forward to all of that. Um, so, this is a fun discussion.
It really is. And I actually had this discussion this morning when I went to go get a dental exam. And she was complaining about her menopausal symptoms. When she heard we had the podcast, she couldn't wait till we discussed women's health, which will be coming up on one of our episodes. We have a wonderful functional medicine doctor who will sit with us on that one. But basically, my advice to her after being a personal trainer for 20 years was the 80/20 rule. It made most of my clients extremely happy because they could 80% of the time take responsibility, eat healthy, drink lots of water, do all the things that they knew in their own good common sense that they needed to do to stay well. Shop the outside of the grocery store. Don't eat anything out of a box or a bag. If they did that 80% of the time, then the other 20%, have fun. Go have margarita night. Have the tacos. Have a piece of cheesecake, whatever makes you happy, because happiness and mental health is a huge part of staying well, and we will go over that as well in future episodes. Great, great methods and ways for you to keep your world just balanced and calm, and where all this stuff going on with RFK Jr. and all of our government, it won't touch you. You just learn how to just breeze right through it.
I like to use the phrase separate the signal from the noise.
Yeah.
Okay. And follow the signal. Don't worry about the noise, and then just, take care of you and yours. But we're so glad that you came together with us again this week on our podcast, which is TMI with Teryl and Martha. We look forward to getting together back with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe. We want you to be a part of it, and follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms, so we look forward to being a part of your life.
So we love being here with you every single week, where your health deserves a little oversharing.